Vicky Bly. Hello, Vicky. How are you? Vicky Bly says, when you and Jamie did the greased lightning myth, where you mixed hot oil and water to create a 30-foot fireball, was it as much fun as it looked? Okay, let me explain. This is about how to not put out a grease fire. And for everyone out there, here's how not to put out a grease fire with water. Don't ever put out a grease fire with water. Don't ever think if there's a fire on your stove that water will help. Water will not help. Stop thinking about water as a way to put out fire when you are cooking. What you should then do is, instead of that, if you have a fire on your stove, take a rag and drape it over it. Take the lid and put it on the pot. These are the things you do with the fire. These aren't comprehensive firefighting techniques that I'm giving here, but water is absolutely not something. But we wanted to show the worst case scenario of what could happen if you mix water and oil on a stove. And the results are spectacular. And then Jamie came up with, I think, one of his all-time great booby traps. Because, here we are, we're thinking about okay, we've got grease boiling and we pour water in it and it vaporizes. We get this big fireball and all that. Okay, wait, how do we get it to go more? And we talk about getting it more vigorous and we're going back and forth. And then Jamie is just sitting there off in the corner like he would. And, an hour goes by, everyone talking, and Jamie goes, what about just taking a can of soup and putting it in a pot of boiling oil until the can fails? And dudes and dudettes, that is one of the scariest things I have ever witnessed happening. So to describe the physics, Jamie took a can of consommé, which is mostly water, and he put it in a pot of oil on the stove and turned on the burner for the stove. Now the oil starts heating. The oil starts heating. The oil starts heating. And it starts heating the can of consommé, which is a sealed soup can. That can heats until it fails. When it fails, it's way past the boiling point. So the instant it fails, all of the water that was in that consommé flashes to steam immediately, but it's at the bottom of a pot of oil. So when it flashes to steam, boom, it vaporizes this steam. And I know you're saying it was a 30-foot fireball, but in fact, I think it might have been even bigger. It might have been 30 feet in diameter, but it was like 70 feet tall. It was such a thing. It was terrifying. So it was a perfect filmic explosion. In film, what you often do is you vaporize gasoline and then you set it on fire. And that's how you get a big fireball that doesn't burn everything down. Jamie was effectively doing this in a kind of Jason Bourne way, where it's like you're leaving the house, you put the consommé in the pot of boiling oil and you leave, and eventually, boom, the house blows up. Please don't do that. Please don't anyone ever, ever, ever do that unless you're the star of an action movie and that's what the scene requires. Vicky, your second question was, did the SF Fire Department enjoy helping you do this? Yes, they did. Look, firefighters, they tend to love fire. That's absolutely clear. And it's a complicated job because your job is spent dealing with everybody else's worst day of their whole lives. So when fire departments get to play with fire in a safe way that isn't somebody else's worst day of their whole life, I think it's a red letter day for them. And they really do enjoy setting stuff on fire. And it is really fun to get their help and expertise in setting things on fire. 100%. Ooh. With all the new material that's come out since Mythbusters, what would a new Star Wars special look like? Wow. Well, there's definitely some things Mando does with some of the devices on him, like the grappling hook. There's definitely that. We could almost do some Rocket Pack stories at this point. That is a really good question. Gandalf the Green. Really? Gandalf the Green. Says, often old builds had to be cannibalized for new myths, like the chicken gun becoming the helicopter firefighting pump. I forgot about that. That's funny. And it was done in a way that completely disassembled the old build and couldn't be put back together. Are there any builds that you really wished you could have kept in the end because they were so unique? No, not really. There is one piece that I missed, which is I made a pair of ornate Chinese thrones for the Chinese rocket chair explosion. And they were identical, and we destroyed one. And one survived is in quotes. That's always a piece I was really happy with when I finished it. And I was sad I didn't get to keep one. And it was mostly like I would have kept one if one was keepable, but the one that was survived was barely being held together. So I had to let that one go. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.